Bitter criticism. Dystopian world. This is the post. I don't know. This is the illiberal world Donald Trump is building. The illiberal world or something. Question is, there's a trade, a tariff war, war tariff going on, and I guess China already won. This is the swan song. This is the United States is over because everybody will start to doing business with China, and only China. Let's read some. I don't know, Russia Today. I was reading Russia Today, and now I guess I have to do more Russia Today. Let's read more Russia Today, all about tariffs. I read something from U.S. sanctions against. I guess I'm going to keep reading. U.S. sanctions against Russia are unprecedented. Here's why there's no effort to end them. And I will take from, consider that Trump's new offensive amounts to, in effect, a form of economic warfare, whether on one-sided or not, independent of, that is, whether other countries retaliate, as China has already started doing and has more will soon, or hold still out of fear that any resistance will make America's aggression even worse, as U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is threatening in true mobster style. The boss has just shattered your kneecap with a carpenter's hammer, and that may feel bad, but don't make him really angry by trying to fight back, or he will put your head in a vice next. You know what I understand about this trade war is that China will not do the same. You know, China will not impose tariffs on nobody, on anybody in the world, and that's how China won. Making peace, making capitalism, making business, and that's it. And everybody in the world, I know right here in Chile, the people are addicts to Nike shoes, Nike sneakers, Vans sneakers, and so on. But this is going to be so expensive. The only option it will be buy Chinese shoes. That's it, and that's the only thing remains. You know, for example, this very shoe right here, an Under Armour shoe, is killing me. It's killing my ankle. Of course, it was a second-hand shoe, but we will not see more North America, no more American shoes around here, and that's fine for me. You know, maybe things are going to get ugly because of oil, because of gas prices, but who knows? I guess America don't sell oil neither. The oil we consume here in anywhere comes from Saudi Arabia, etc. Brazil, who knows? Anyway, yet Russia has already faced the single most extensive, obstinate, and ferocious economic warfare attack carried out by states not officially at war in modern history. and not merely from the US, but the collective West as a whole. As Russian President Vladimir Putin recently told a meeting of the Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs in an important speech sorely underreported in Western mainstream media, there are now, quote, 28,595 sanctions against individuals and legal entities. That is a number significantly exceeding, quote, all sanctions ever imposed on all other nations combined, end quote. Even as CNN journalists acknowledged in a recent interview with Kirill Dmitriev, the head of Russia's direct investment fund, that the scale of the sanctions deployed against Russia has, quote unquote, no precedent. And yet Russia has survived this assault, explicitly aimed at its economic devastation, political disintegration, and geopolitical degradation, instead of crumbling under the weight of what Putin has acknowledged, with certainly deliberate understatement, as quote-unquote serious challenges. Russia has done well in a way that has surprised many international observers and disappointed its enemies in the West. Indeed, to take only one indicator, in 2024, Russia had one of the most dynamically growing economies in the G20. This outcome has produced by both Russian businesses and the state. The latter has applied a whole set of instruments, including capital controls, expanded spending, deliberate import substitution, and policies of reorienting trade. In combination with the effect of the sanctions themselves, the result has been what one analyst has called a, quote, seismic new shift in global trade flows, end quote. Much of it in Russia's favor. Moscow's systematic response to this challenge has played a key role in bringing about this outcome. Take one comparatively small example. A recent conversation between Putin and the head of the Russian Export Center, REC, Veronika Nikishina. The REC is a government agency that promotes Russian non-commodity exports. Consider that if it was established in 2015 and that 2014 was the year in which the Ukraine crisis escalated with a Western regime change operation in Kiev, as well as sanctions intended to punish Russia for resisting massive Western overreach. It is obvious then that the REC is one reflection of a strategic policy choice that some Western observers will still underestimate. Moscow's reaction to the West's massive and constantly escalating economic warfare attack has not been to rely solely on finding ways to get its raw materials and commodities to international markets and buyers. Instead, there has been a deliberate emphasis on strengthening non-commodities. Indeed, in 2018, a key presidential decree on national priorities targets included the, quote, creation of a high productivity export-oriented sector, end quote. Now, Nikishina is reporting that 85% of Russia's non-commodity exports are flowing to, quote-unquote, friendly countries. Russia's resilience was the message that Dmitriev had for CNN's audience too. Asked if Moscow is, in essence, asking for a reduction of sanctions in the ongoing normalization talks with the Trump administration, the head of Russia's Foreign Direct Investment Agency said, quote-unquote, absolutely not. Let that sink in. Likewise, the spokesman for the Russian presidency, Dmitry Peskov, is on record stating that the issue of sanctions will not interfere with negotiations with Washington. It is true that negotiations among adults are complex and confidential processes, and not everything needs to be shared with the public. It is also true that Moscow has an interest in displaying indifference to sanctions, especially because Washington cannot drop the bad habit of occasionally threatening even more of them. Finally, it is very hard to see why Moscow would not welcome a lifting of sanctions if it were to happen on terms it finds acceptable and useful for Russia, that is. But the key point is Moscow's messaging that it cannot be blackmailed, neither by imposing nor by lifting sanctions. During the same speech before the Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs mentioned above, Putin sketched Moscow's current position, and it is anything but naive, soft, or pliant. Quote, sanctions, Putin reminded his audience of entrepreneurs, quote, are neither temporary nor target measures. Instead, quote, they constitute a mechanism of systemic strategic pressure against our nation. Regardless of global developments or shifts in the international order, our competitors will perpetually seek to constrain Russia and diminish its economic and technological capacities, end quote. In other words, don't kid yourself, Western sanctions will not simply go away, even if the Ukraine war ends. Even worse, they might well keep escalating because, according to Putin, now, quote, the so-called Western elites routinely threaten Russia with new sanctions, end quote, and shorn out whole new packages of them incessantly. Well, that's why China wants to be friends forever and never be enemies of Russia. Wang Yi said. Note that Putin issued this warning against exuberant expectations a month after the Russia-US talks in Riyadh. That is well after the process of negotiating a normalization of relationships with Washington had begun in public. Clearly, the Russian leadership sees no reason why better or at least more rational relationships with the US should require pledging for sanctions relief. Indeed, the opposite is true. Moscow is ready to explore and pursue this normalization policy while remaining absolutely realistic about what to expect with regard to Western economic warfare. And there you have it. For years before Trump 2.0 started the new tariff crusade that is now frightening everyone, one of the world's most important countries has proven that even much worse economic warfare can be withstood. It can even become, again, in Putin's words, quote, catalyst of positive structural changes, end quote, in an, quote, economy, including in the financial and technological spheres, as well as in many other key areas, end quote. Trump's newest assault on the world, in other words, is deeply ironic. While the American president strives to, in essence, initiate a policy of rebuilding America's real industrial and manufacturing economy, his ruin the neighbor methods are likely to speed up the process in which other countries' economies learn to detach from the US and to rely more on each other. Whatever happens inside the US, Trump's own undercutting of America's position in the international system of trade, supply chains, and against his expectations, even investment and finance, will also be a catalyst of a world of both political multipolarity and distinct economic zones, if not blocks, and as Pepe Escobar said, nodes. And that in turn may well be a necessary stage in burying Western predominance for good. Yeah, is just happening right now. The West is burying themselves, you know, and that starts to happen with this warfare, with this tariff war. And the last paragraph. These are long-term post-Cold War processes that did not start with Trump. Their root cause in the decline of the US, which he's trying to stop so desperately and crudely, and the rise of other non-Western powers. Trump's tariff policy is certain to be bad for what is left of globalization. Just 1 second. Ai, valeu. Valeu. I got a little shy because of visitors to the court, but I'm going to end it up this just last paragraph. Trump's tariff policy is Trump's tariff policy is certain to be banned for what is left of globalization, quote unquote globalization. The economic equivalent of the infamous quote rules-based order, end quote. That is of always stacking the deck in favor of Western power and profits. But that is precisely why it may end up favoring the globe. Does it? All, or at least the vast majority of humanity, and does it? The statements, views, and opinions expressed in this column are solely those of the author, and do not necessarily represent those of Russia today. Well, yeah, we're going to have a bad time buying second-hand clothes. What about that? Second-hand clothes. Now, you know, people right here, they buy American clothes. They said American clothes, second-hand clothes. But these clothes, they are just garbage from the US. So I cannot imagine how these tariffs could hit us right here in Chile, because garbage clothes will still be very cheap.